We are going to look at how to go from this table to a linear equation. First, we need to identify which of the columns in this table is x and which of the columns is y. Hopefully you came to the conclusion that this input column is the x column and this output column is the y column. So our next step after identifying which column is which is step 1, identifying the slope. Now if you look at our linear equation in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, the slope would be the m column, the m. So in order to find the m of our equation, we are going to look for a pattern in the output or y values in this table. So as we look at this table, we can see our output increases by 2 each time, and so on. So, knowing that it increases by 2 each time, what would our slope be? Hopefully you got the answer that the slope is positive 2. Now, if it were to be decreasing by 2 each time, our slope would be a negative 2. But since it's increasing, it's a positive 2. So I'm going to go ahead and write a 2 in the m equals. Next, our next step, now that we know what m is to find out what b is, aka our y-intercept. Now in order to do this, we need to find the y value when x is 0. So all we have to do is go to our table, our input-output table, and here we can see that when x is 0, y is 4. What would our y-intercept be knowing this information? Hopefully you got that the y-intercept would in fact be 4. And now that we know the y-intercept is 4, we can plug in a 4 for our b. Now, in the case that we don't have the 0 given to us in the x column, we will have to do something else. So let's go back and look at our table. Now, if we pretend that this column doesn't exist, we aren't given that, what we need to do is pick another pair, an xy pair, and plug that into our equation for y and x. So let's use the example of 3 and 10. X is our 3 and y is our 10. Now looking at this equation, if we plug in 10 for y, we plug in 2 for m, since we know that m equals 2, and we plug in 3 for x, all that's left to do is solve for b. 2 times 3 is 6. And from here, what would b be? Hopefully you were able to subtract 6 from each side and get that b equals 4, which we found on the last page also. Finally, we can take these values and plug them into our equation to get our final linear equation from the table. So what would our final answer be? Hopefully you were able to write it in slope-intercept form, with the answer being y equals 2x plus b. This is our final answer. And we get y equals 2x plus 4. And if we look at our overall answer, we just learned how to go from this table to this linear equation.